Hey there. Thanks for tuning in today. First off, before we get going into talking about high school sports and what's going on there, I want to remind you about the Impact Driven Leader Summit. It is May 7th and 8th in Spokane, Washington. I would love for you to be there. We have some amazing guests. Jenny Catrone is going to speak about her book, Culture Matters. Katie Harnato, the president of USL Spokane, and Robbie Emery, the director of character development for Michigan football. They are going to deliver, and you will get so much value, not only from those speakers, but also interacting with everyone throughout the room. Make sure you get your tickets. Go to idlsummit.com to buy your tickets. And with that, Alex,
I will be there.
You will be there.
I will be there.
You will be there. Excited for you to be there. Today on tap, we teased this in the open. We talked about what's going on in high school sports. There was an article came from Dr. Mark Reck. Mark is a professor at, I believe, North Dakota State, if I remember correctly. And he wrote an article, and it was in the conversation. I picked it over the weekend. And this was the title: High school sports are losing athletes to private clubs, but schools can keep them by focusing on character development. I want to throw a caveat to this. Actually, Mark is the assistant professor of kinesiology at the University of North Dakota. My apologies, North Dakota. There are just as many clubs that are losing players to play in high school because of how vigilant they are and restrictive they are. So it's really a two-way. As I'm a board member of an athletic club, I have kids that are playing in high school sports. I would just say this is one of our hottest messes in the U.S. right now. If you look at competition, whether it's gender-based competition, if you look at money from NIL, if you look at some of our ills in society, we're hitting the nail on the head today.
And also youth, like the youth leadership and youth coaching in some of the younger programs, right? That needs tremendous overhaul.
It's ridiculous. There's a stat here that Mark referenced. It was pretty substantial. I'm just trying to scan through the article here before we get too far, but it was talking about the increase in club sports, how much it's increased over the last 10 to 15 years, where
spending.
Just the amount of, just this is recent estimate put total spending on youth sports at over $40 billion in 2024. That is a $30 billion, a 4x, 4 times more than what was spent in 2010.
Wow.
Just 14 years ago.
Crazy. It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but as with anything, as I've experienced, with a lot of money brings a lot of problems. I think there was a song.
Classic more money, song. More problems.
More money, more problems. We got more money and more problems when it comes to youth sports, for sure. Let's take off and run with this, Alex. Give me your take on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, as a former athlete, I played Division I football at Baylor in the Big 12. I had this conversation. I remember I had cousins that were probably 5 years younger than I was. They played soccer, but they looked up to me, just my journey, from high school football. Then I did a postgraduate year at a prep school and then to Baylor. And they just asked, like, I want to do that. And, how did you do it? What was it like in that journey? And I said, it's a full-time job. Like, whatever path you take in sports, for me, it was a passion and it was fun. But I always said, listen, if you want to play that big time, in the big times, like, it's a professional job. I mean, it really was. Or just go somewhere like D3 and have fun with it. And I think that's kind of where I start with a lot of this, of like youth sports into high school sports into private clubs. The private clubs, it gets a lot more competitive, from probably the coaches to the parents and all in between. And I think that's like one factor as a parent now of 2 young children, and obviously all your kids are athletes, is just kind of assessing, like, does the kid love the sport? Is it just something he likes to do for fun? and like be the guide, as the parent of where you should kind of take, your kids. Are they actually extremely talented at basketball or baseball or football or hockey, and help them find this path of like, okay, maybe they can make this into a career. If not on the field, there's tons of jobs within that area. So, that's kind of where I start, is like from a parent's perspective of like helping the child understand, if they go down this path of sports, how serious do they want to take it, or let's just make it fun and a place to grow and learn and learn a lot of life skills and lessons.
You as I'm trying to collect my thoughts here based upon what you just said, one of the things that a handful of weeks ago had the podcast with Ken Rusk, the author of Blue Collar Cash,
Yeah.
and we shared that, and it was really kind of dissecting this idea of going to college as a status point for parents. In so many cases in our society today, athletic prowess is a status factor for parents. And I think that is by far and away, and people will say, oh, you're living vicariously through your kids. Okay, there's that element where you think about that is either your kids get to do things you never did, or you're reliving what you got to live. And then we look at the idea of not only from youth sports, but the pedestal or the financial factor that has made professional sports so outlandish. I think it's created this perfect storm. It's social media, it is status, it is financial, it is the increase in money spent.
Yeah.
Why are parents investing $40 billion into youth sports? Well, they're doing twofold. That's what's occupying them. Meaning we're in a workforce. How do we engage our kids? What do we do with them? Like my kids haven't really gone to many camps, but they're involved in a lot of sports. They're competing, they're doing things, and they've gone to a few sports camps, but not to the extent of like other interest camps. And here's a factor is so many of the youth sports, whether I look at my three kids, dance, soccer, and now football, basketball, those are expected nearly to be year round. They're 10 to 11 month factions in club entity.
Yeah.
They are. And if you're not willing to do that, a lot of clubs are saying, we don't have time for you. And, it's what they're using as a differentiating. Kind of the idea of recreational sports are gone. I just saw this the other day. Dan Orlovsky, I believe, who is an ESPN correspondent, and he talked about, where he's at in coaching. He's like, I just want my kids to be in sports and have fun.
Yeah.
Like, can we just let them have fun in sports again and not be this, oh, I have to continue to raise the ranks to get recruited, to get a star level, to get, on this list or that list so I can have any opportunity. And this is where I've personally experienced it. And I've seen this, like I said, I've been involved in the soccer world. All three of my kids play, but my middle son played the most at the highest extent. And what I saw in that sport is high school soccer in much of the world is irrelevant when it comes to, are you going to play collegiately? Are you going to play beyond that? Like a lot of clubs, they may not even let their players play high school.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say there was a girl, one grade below me in high school. She was All-American starting sophomore year. She actually went to go play for the U.S. women's team. I think she might still be on the team, like starter. And her private club wouldn't let her play on the high school team. I remember that.
Yeah. And what I find is there's a lot of kids that are in club sports that go play in high school to be able to have fun.
Yeah.
Because their club has said, no, this is a no fun zone. And one of the pieces here where I think it's so difficult in this idea that, Dr. Reck talks about is high school sports are losing athletes to private clubs. I can actually say it's going the other way too. Is a lot of clubs are losing kids to high school sports because they get to play basketball and soccer and football instead of just saying, well, you can only play one. And the great opportunity in both the club or the high school it's not exclusive. One shouldn't focus on the other, is this idea of character development. And
Yeah.
what blows me away, if you and I were to sit here right now, okay, and we were to call up any college coach, any professional coach, and say, hey, do you think it's more important for clubs in coaches programs to focus on mental health, character development, personal development, or technical development? And I can guarantee, because I've had way too many conversations with way too many of them, that they would all say, man, if the club focused on character and personal
100%.
development, we would be better off at this level. There is rarely are we finding a situation where, there is a overwhelming technical ability, and it is, where, it's just the technical ability. It goes back to like this, the classic Wayne Gretzky quote, and it applies but doesn't apply. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah.
And Wayne Gretzky was like, hey, the best hockey players don't play in the NHL. The players that make those around them better are who play in the NHL.
Yeah.
And I think this comes back to, what is it that's going to help you be a better teammate and mentally better? It's this character development. And unfortunately, whether it's high schools, whether it's clubs, all of them have lost sight of it. And I'm going to say all, because I really, as much as I've tried hard, I've
Yeah.
tried really hard to work on this. I've focused on this a lot, both within a club, external club. I have an event coming up again this spring, working specifically on this.
Yeah.
And it's almost with a stiff arm to say, we don't need that. But the guys that show up, the coaches that show up, the women that show up, like, this is what we need to be talking about.
And that's kind of why when I started, like I think it's half of it is parents, getting parents involved more, and then like yourself, like you're in the thick of all this, right? My kids are still too young, but like you're literally in the middle of this situation.
On
All
both
your
sides.
kids, yeah, on
Both sides, having it as a parent, but also someone that does what I do and being passionate about it. If you haven't watched already to understand I'm passionate about this, I'm sorry that my intensity is showing up about this, but it's why I did this last year. I'm hosting an event after my Impact Driven Leader Summit. We're doing a coaches workshop on May 9th if you're in Spokane, for specifically football, but any coach can come to it. It's something very $25 a coach. And last year, I mean, it was underwhelming, the coaches that wanted to show up, and it's frustrating, because it's like, we talked about mental fitness, we talked about leadership, we talked about all the things competing, we talked about all the things that aren't tactical, because unfortunately those are determining everything for your team. And based upon this article from Mark in the conversation, this is our opportunity to teach kids through sport.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what, I remember growing up in the 90s as a kid playing soccer and I mean, I played everything. It was just more fun. And if someone saw like, oh, hey, this kid's really talented, they'd be like, hey, your son's really talented. We see something in him. There's a private club. We'd love him to come try out. And it was just kind of, everything always felt fun to me. And now it seems like, and I don't know, the money and I think it always goes back to money, right? The money that athletes are making in the 90s is nothing. And
Pennies.
even college now, they have pennies compared. Yeah. And there's so many young athletes, young kids, that they can be the generational game changer for their whole lineage if they can go pro, right? They may come, a lot of these kids may come from underprivileged areas. Yeah. And the parents may be pushing like, this is our shot, that you are their shot to get this family out of this situation.
I have a friend, I was just at a soccer match over the weekend and was talking to a good friend whose son, who just signed with a professional club as an academy player. He's 17. And we were talking about it. And there's another professional on the team who signed when he was 16. And he pulled this other kid aside. He said, hey, I put too much pressure on myself. And what I wonder and think about is that player, that the 31-year-old professional saying this to the 17-year-old. And I wonder how much of, his parents were immigrants to the United States, and how much at that time was, this is what will get our family, to a different place. And why was that pressure? Whereas maybe this kid who's 17, he doesn't have that pressure. And luckily he has good advisors around him. Like, hey dude, just take it all in, like
Mhm.
have fun with it, just be at ease. And also I'm going to interject this, as I was talking to that guy, and I know this kid very well. I've coached him for 6, 7 years. Is the greatest thing that happened at this professional club for him was all the stuff we're talking about, the mental strength, the
Yeah.
character development, all of those things. And as he was sharing, he knew I was frustrated, because those are things that I wish that the club had focused on more. And, the ability to teach life lessons through sport. It doesn't matter if you're a club. It doesn't matter if you're a high school. That's your great opportunity. And again, I go back to, if you're teaching those lessons well, you're going to have a ton of success. You really are. And it's
Yeah.
not one or the other. And this is where I think the problem lies. I don't think it's as much the parent as it is the administration and or the coaches in these clubs and high schools.
And why? And I think I agree with you. I agree with you. And I go back. I'm like, why is it the administration? Why, because when I was a kid, we had a great football coach, because he did teach all the life lessons, and I learned a lot, more than just how to be a good football player. And so I had a good experience. And I'm seeing it just as much as you are from social media, all these young kids. I mean, 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids at these camps, 5-star recruits, 6'5", 7 offers at age 15. And just, it's just these drills, right? They're just running drills. I never, ever have seen like that, any part of it being focusing on more of the leadership aspect to it. And the realization that 99.9% of these kids will not make it to the pros.
Yeah. Well, I going back to it, where is the administration and I would say the coaches themselves, is their leadership perspective is broken too. And,
Yeah.
it's often, and we talk about this in leadership circles. I, see it in coaches, is there's very much the element where people think you need to be the Bobby Knight to be a good coach. Like, how many national championships Bobby Knight won in his 30 plus years of coaching? One. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One. I wouldn't say that's a resounding success rate. One. Okay. And so to use that example, I'm going to yell, scream, get in your face and tell you how worthless you are and expect that is what's going to make you a better player.
Mm-hmm.
I had this conversation within our roundtable the other day, and we were talking about the military. And there's this perception that the military is hard. They just beat people up like Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
grind you up and spit you out, and they tell you how worthless you are, and that's going to make you stronger. No, those organizations don't. Now, could that happen in some places with some? Yeah. But overwhelmingly, no. My good friends, Navy SEALs, like, those people are broken and they're not safe for you, me, or anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want the guy who is so mentally broken because he's been, if you've watched the movie Full Metal Jacket, just
Yeah.
imagine the result of that. I don't want that guy on my side putting his arm back to back with me and going to save me. I
Right.
want someone who knows they have value, who trusts me and trusts others and feels, trustworthy. That's the guy I want.
But where's the breakdown in the coaching administration? Like, why has that?
Because we see
splintered?
this perception and we think that's what works, because there's not enough people saying, oh no, this is what really works. And so it's kind of this, if my team didn't win, well, I wasn't tactical enough. I didn't write up the right plays. I'm like, no, quite honestly, that's probably not it. Like, they didn't execute because they either didn't have the self-confidence, they didn't have the interpersonal trust, they didn't have the ability to say, I can go do it. I was watching, March Madness right now, and I was watching the other day, and Charles Barkley and one of the other guys, I forget his name, it'll come to me, and they were talking about how soft kids are. And I'm like, No, that's not the case. Because for everyone that says, oh, they're soft kids, there's a national championship, there's a conference champion, there are tough kids all around. What's the difference? Their coaching, their
I think,
leadership.
yeah.
It's, there are
And the
kids
rules.
that,
And also the rules have changed tremendously.
yeah, but I mean, you
Yeah.
go withstanding. I mean, that is what it is as far as
Yeah.
what's a foul, not a foul. Is it okay? Is the quarterbacks they all right, fine.
Yeah.
You can go within those. But if you look at who is the kid who's just going to give it his all, they're out there.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
player, they're out there. What's the difference? They had somebody that believed in them. They are mentally strong. They're, and I take away, I'm not talking about the absolute, loose cannons that are trying to hurt. I'm talking about good, upstanding people that you're like, man, I'd love for my kid to, be a coached by or mentored by them. And so it comes back to, we have this misperception of what actual good leadership is. And it's also this. We have many coaches who think that if I get my U5 football team to the championship, Nick Saban's calling. He's going to call me up. He's going to find a spot for me.
So you think it's the winning in the younger programs is going to help them get to the next level, then the next level is all by winning.
Yeah.
Getting
and that's a little tongue in cheek, but there are people that are coaching that want the accolades, that are trying to fill their insecurity hole by being a winning good coach. And that's the misperception, as opposed to, what my hope and desire is. And this, I believe in this to this day. I don't even know like what teams times that I coach, head coach, this or that, don't care about my record. When I go to a stadium and watch a soccer game, and I see either parents of kids that I coached or I see kids that I coached that say, hey, thank you. There was a situation that the family said earlier, who I coached with him, and my parents were there, and he was saying, hey, this is what your son did. Man, as his perspective as another coach, but having two sons who I coach, that's what's more important. Can the guy who is, I'm 45. My first soccer coach, Gary Freed, he created an environment that I love the sport. I haven't seen him. I played with his son. I haven't seen him probably in 35 years plus. But he made that impact on me. That's the opportunity, coaches. That's the opportunity when they're in business, when they're running a mortgage business, when they're running a videography business, when they're working at whatever organization. Say, you know what? I appreciate when I worked with Coach Alex, and you know what he taught me is that as long as we keep going, we'll never lose.
Yeah.
Those are the things that are meaningful in life, and not like we won the 8th grade champion. Yeah, those are great. And yeah, we can aim to win those things.
Right.
And aim to win in life.
It reminds me of ever see Varsity Blues, Bud Kilmer?
Oh yeah.
It's like the kids couldn't wait to get out of his program in his life because it was all focused on just winning, and it all eventually came crumbling down. If you watch a great movie, by the way,
great.
And instead of like, the coach who, the coach who,
I watched that maybe 3 months ago, because it had been so long. I watched the movie. Dude, there's so many good lines. I mean, that's
such a great movie. It really is a great movie.
But you're exactly right. And unfortunately, there's still too many coaches that believe they need to be the Bud Kilmers.
Yeah.
I saw one last weekend.
Tell me about, you don't obviously tell them, but like what, in what aspect? Like what was?
We're at a game.
Yeah.
And sitting in the stands, and there's a player, and there's his ex-coach right in front of him. And the player yells out his name like 3, 4, 5 times. And the coach ignores him. And finally, his partner sitting beside him, she goes, hey, he's saying your name. And the guy ignored the kid. Begrudgingly turned around and was like, but ignored him. Why? because that kid no longer chose to play and went to play another sport. You wonder why he didn't play anymore. And that's the example of leadership. Man, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like, get over yourself.
You see the video that just went viral of the young girls basketball coach, maybe his high school, tugging on the girl's hair because I think they had lost or about to lose, and she made a mistake, and he got pissed. It was an old man.
Remember when Mike Tomlin did that?
Yeah.
Remember when Mike Tomlin did that?
Yeah.
On the sideline, and he kind of like he got into it. Where was it? Yeah, I mean it. And again, those things can. I'm not disvaluing that. Hey, good people make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I've done things. I've probably been in a situation where maybe I didn't handle it perfect. But my heart is, if I ever see anyone that I ever coached, man, I want to just, hey, I'm here to support you, whatever.
Yeah.
Glad to. And, that's, I'm fortunate that, I think that's happened. But when you see a situation like that, you're a 50-year-old man and you're treating a 16-year-old kid like he's trash.
Yeah.
Like, what's your problem? And unfortunately, we see that in society because in what I can imagine in that case is that person is so insecure and so egotistical that unless, this idea of unless they make me look good,
right,
I'm going to treat them like trash. And it's just like,
I feel like there needs to be a system, a way to a system that needs to be created within the youth sports structure, the high school sports structure, and even private of setting like these are the values that we look for in our coaches and our assistant coaches and anyone involved and like set something. I don't know if this exists or not.
I mean, and this is one of the things that I believe in. I've seen it go two ways, and this is why I'm encouraged. Like, hey, if your kid's going to be playing for a club, interview the coach.
Oh, yeah.
Don't just put them there just because that's the greatest opportunity. Because as I've seen, hey, you want opportunities, they can come from anywhere. You don't have, being on a better team, this or that. All right, fine. But interview who your kid's going to be around. And unfortunately, what sucks is that's really, really hard in the high school situation. And it's also like
why?
I had to go through because you can't pick and choose who the high school coaches are.
Right.
And one of the things that I've learned, and I don't know why it is, but in certain states, I know in Texas, you can't be a coach unless you're a teacher. And even in the state of Washington, where I live,
New Jersey was similar.
Okay. Yeah. It is, you can be, but there is a heavy, heavy push that they be teachers. And my only estimation, because I don't know any different, because I've seen it happen in two different instances, is the estimation is because the unions want to be involved. Like, okay, whatever. I don't know this way or that way. Mm-hmm. But because of that, you end up seeing some really bad actors that are involved because, in our meritocracy of society, unions have taken that meritocracy and thrown them out the window. This isn't a discussion to brick back and forth the unions, but I've seen that is where the organizations get very hamstrung how they can apply values and or expectations of conduct,
right,
because of the unions.
But
I think that's where it's so difficult is you have a lot of just, pardon my French, shitty coaches that are allowed to be shitty because the union's just kind of like, well, all right, they have tenure. And this idea of,
and they are coaching our children. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when it comes to things like, man, stop and look at who are influencing our kids. And it makes it really hard. And so this is where I would say a lesson though, is I appreciate tremendously Mark's article, because I think high school sports are a great place for it, but so are clubs, is teaching character development. And if there's a club, I mean, there should be an attribute of that. If not, if you're just paying all your money to go to a bunch of trips and, there's the memes on TikTok where it's kind of like, we're going to Costa Rica, U12, whatever, from, Michigan, and they're going on these, elaborate trips to Dubai to play, U12 baseball. Okay. But it's like,
right,
what are they doing to help your kid be a better person? What are they doing to make sure that the adults leading them are becoming better people? What personal development money are they putting into their coaches? Because that should be our priority.
Mhm.
If that's not the case, man, you've missed the boat. The other thing is I had to learn it the hard way. And you come to an age, and I think there's a fine line, and I don't know, is unfortunately there's some bad leaders in business too.
Yeah.
And part of the thing about learning about bad leaders and bad coaches is how do I deal with it later? And sometimes you got to put up with it. It's for a season. And then you say, no, I'm not going to put up with this again. And I think one of the challenges too, especially from the athlete, not being a begrudging parent, and I haven't always done this well, is helping the athletes learn what good leadership looks like
Yeah.
and expecting that and demanding it from their coaches. I think it's imperative that high school athletes know the difference between good and bad leadership. And I'm adamant about that. And as a player, demanding to be led well.
So, Tyler, let me ask you, say your son is in a sport or daughter, and you notice that the coach is not delivering on all these things in leadership. You try to talk to the coach, you try to talk to the superintendent or whatever the sports
Athletic director.
athletic director. You talk to your son and you're showing him this is what leadership. He's like, all right, I get it, and like. And then he goes back to the sport, right? New season, you're in mini camp and all these things, and the coach is still there, and he's witnessing just like garbage coaching and leadership. Like, what do you do at that point? Do you continue to try to, help your kid, work through the whole situation? How do you kind of like traverse this?
So this is real life. This is in the moment, and it's difficult and it's hard, and it is celebrating wins when they're there. And I think really it is, it's going those things, trying to talk to people. And as I've learned, people don't want to hear it. There is very much, as I've seen through organizations, there are great, open-minded, growth-minded people. And then there are very fixed-minded and closed off and insecure people. It's in the organizations. It's why I do what I do, because I've been through that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best thing to do is really come back and say, leadership starts with you. And that is, be the example, be the leader that people deserve. And that can be really, really hard for a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old. It can be really, really, really hard, especially when they're getting mentally, physically, verbally abused. And it's happening. Like, don't hear this and think, oh, that doesn't happen. No, one of the things I've learned, so part of being in different youth organizations, there's a thing called safe sport. And safe sport has kind of some teachings that you need to go through for, verbal, sexual assault, those type of things, to recognize it in these youth organizations. And when I went through it, I think it was about a year ago when I went through the last time, is they had this, is abuse, a physical abuse doesn't really happen so much anymore. You think about the coach grabbing the arm, the punching the kids, the pushing them, the grabbing the face mask shake. That doesn't happen so much anymore. What happens more is there's way more emotional abuse. Mm-hmm. Is I'm going to ice you out. I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to, do what happened, what I mentioned at the sporting match that I witnessed. It's going to be those things, and that emotional abuse has overwhelmed the physical. And so when we're talking, be aware of those and really helping guide through it. And also, in a way, trying to help our community say, no, this isn't acceptable. It shouldn't be allowed. Unfortunately, it's a very, very, very hard ship to turn. And that's why I appreciate the article by Mark in the conversation. So it's out and spoken about more. And where I see the reluctance is the reluctance for accountability. And I think that's where, as a parent, as someone involved, it's really speaking, there needs to be accountability. And too often, as I've seen, and I don't know what the driver is. I don't know if it's, again, I don't understand why, but I've seen it, and I've seen it in multiple different school organizations,
Yeah.
is that there's a lot of cover up. There's a lot of cover up when it comes to bad actors in this case.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. I don't understand why. I don't know why leaders are afraid to say, we got a problem, let's admit it. I really don't. And I don't understand where, from a organizational leadership, from a school board to an executive to the super, I don't understand why there's such the fear of it. It has to come back to insecurity. It has to come up to, accountability and fear of accountability. But it's a real problem. And so coming back to what can I do as a solution? Help my kids grow, be that support of my kids, make sure that they understand they're valued. And the best thing they can do is to be that leader that people deserve.
Yeah.
And, it's amazing that is a lesson that will go through the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And it's
Tyler,
hard.
if maybe some parents that are watching that have kids in it, like, are there, with your kids, did you have some sort of conversation? Did you see it on the field or was it something they expressed to you that something was wrong? Like, or like, how did it all of the above? Like, I guess my question is, like, how does a parent, like, maybe they just notice their kids like down and out and like, hey, what's wrong, bud? What's going on?
My daughter, situation with my daughter. I don't feel bad calling this out. She was playing soccer, sophomore year. Hadn't played soccer. I mean, she played as a freshman, hadn't played since she was in second grade. A bunch of her girlfriends went out, small school, they needed players. Freshman year just plays on the field. Sophomore year, they have no goalie. She says, I'll be goalie. Plays for the year, and pretty much they had, during the week games. And then there was a game on Saturday late in the season, and my daughter told her coach beforehand, very beginning of the season, like, hey, I have something on that day. I can't be there. Coach knew it well beforehand. Comes the week of, it's like, hey, you're going to be there Saturday. Nope. I told you I'm not going to be there. I have a prior commitment. I can't be there. Team goes, they win 10-1. Okay. It wasn't really in question whether they needed it or not. Monday comes around, first day of practice. My daughter got benched. She got sent to second string. Coach goes, I don't know if I can count on you. Starts playing mind games.
Mind games.
She kind of in and out of the lineup that week, ends up playing the rest of the season. It's just like, doesn't play anymore. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why? This is a 16-year-old girl. Like, why are you playing mind games?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? And this was a guy who oftentimes girls, they would win games and he would tear them up one side down the other after they won, and girls would be walking to the sideline bawling. High school girls. It's like, what are you doing? So yeah, I've seen it firsthand. I saw another instance where my son was warming up as a kicker at halftime. Coach comes running out on the field, yells and screams at him, goes back into the locker room, and my son ended up getting benched for the game. He was a starting wide receiver. Why? Because he was warming up at halftime. And supposedly the coaches had a policy, you're not allowed to warm up at halftime if you're the kicker. They'd never told him. They'd never informed him of the policy. That game, in the middle of the game, decided to bench him. Scream at him. Bench him. Why? What are you doing? Another instance where, kids just, getting yelled and screamed at. And, coach is like, well, I just took out my frustrations on you. It's just, it goes on and it's rampant and it's a problem. And as I sit here and I want it to be better, where I find is, man, there's a lot of, the different underbelly. Why is Elon Musk scared for his life? Well, we've seen all the attacks on Tesla dealerships that have nothing to do with him, let's be honest, and people are acting out in that way. It's the same thing why we have no accountability in our school systems. There's just there is none, and
Do you
I
take
don't know where that comes from. And again, I the only thing that I understand and know is when these conversations have been brought up, especially if it's a teacher in case, the union has some strength. And I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but maybe if you're a union, you're watching, we need better accountability for coaches. We need better accountability. And I know that may be difficult to hear, but our kids deserve it. And I don't, again, I don't understand the dynamics. And I know there's a fight between the administrative side and the union. It's just a mess. It
Yeah,
really
it seems like it's
is.
poorly structured and organized that causes a lot of these pain points. And hey, there's
Yeah.
a bad coach, a bad egg. Well, you're gonna have to deal with it because
Well,
he or she is
and here's what's
tenured
different.
or this or
Well,
that.
it's that, or, oh, they played in the NFL. They got to be a great coach. One of the worst coaches that I've seen was a college football Hall of Fame, as far as in the youth spot, was a college football Hall of Famer who played 8 years in the league. He was not a good coach. Why? Because he didn't interact well with kids. Plain and simple. It is what it is. It doesn't mean if you could have all the credentials in the world, and if you don't bring
Right,
out the best in them, it doesn't matter. You can
right,
play professional soccer and doesn't mean you're a good coach at all.
correct, 100%.
No
Look at
way.
Mike Holmgren. Mike Holmgren, Kansas City Chiefs head coach. That guy,
Andy Reid?
Andy. No, yeah. Why am I saying
Andy
Mike
Reid
Holmgren?
played. Mike Holmgren was the
Or
Seattle Seahawks, Green Bay
Packer.
Packers.
He was another one that was good though.
He was a good coach. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
good. Oh yeah, I'm thinking of Andy
I
Reid.
mean,
Andy Reid is
yeah.
a great example of
He played at BYU though.
yeah, but he wasn't like this amazing athlete.
No. I mean, you look at Mike McDaniel, dude. I think he is probably one of the top 3 or 4 coaches in the NFL.
Yeah, I like.
I mean, he played at Yale, but I mean,
stuff.
didn't play in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, there's I mean, Nick Spoelstra, he didn't play.
No, there's
in the
tons
NBA.
of great pro and college coaches that never were like any.
Just because you could do it professionally doesn't mean you can, teach people and guide people. And that's one of the problems.
Different
we
skill
think that,
set.
oh, you have to, like, you can't understand how to play unless you can do it yourself. Really? That's BS.
True. That's not true. Yeah.
Anyways, it's something that gets me passionate.
Yeah, no, I mean, I look forward to it, as my kids get older and see how that all unfolds. And I mean, I'm sure things might change by that point. We're a little ways away, but you are in the middle of it. And I appreciate you sharing those stories. I love sports and, maybe I'm living a little vicariously through you and learning about all these issues that are going on.
And I think the difficulty is we think it's different than what it is. And hey, some kids have different experiences, and I get it. And that's what makes it hard too. And, it really comes back to, and I think the discussion is, what are we doing this for? And I think all of you sports, high school, club really need to take an inventory of that. Is what are you doing it for? And let me tell you the other worst thing that I hate hearing. Hate it. Well, only 1% of you ever play professionally. No, that's a horrible mindset. Like there's a player for the women's team here, and I happened to see her share something that she was told in youth soccer, you'll never be able to play in college. She played for 2 Pac-12 schools. She ended up winning a national championship, and now she plays professionally. I would love to go back to that coach and just kick him right where you know what. You did nothing. You may have motivated her, but for the one that you motivated, how many did you destroy?
I had
Hey, you know what? Yeah. I don't know if you'll play professionally or not, but you know what? If you have the heart, you do the work, and you continue to be a great teammate, you'll have an opportunity. Let's go focus on that instead of me telling you, no, you can't.
Yeah. I had that. My prep school coach he was an asshole. Had the same thing because he wanted me to go to this other school, all this other stuff, and basically said all those things. You can't play there. It's tech. It's, all these things. Why I can't, why you can't, why you can't. And you have to, to a student athlete that may be experiencing it, like you have to find a way to just say, believe in yourself. You have to have that belief, the hard work and energy, like, it will pay off. But like there there
Well,
are
I mean,
people.
I go back to my conversation, that we released a month or so ago with John Gordon. It's like you can be that negative person, but you know what? You're going to squash more dreams than enhance. So go be the positive person. Absolutely. You can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
All right. At some point, maybe it's not going to work out. Maybe there's someone faster, stronger. Okay, great.
Yeah.
But if you
Just
believe
better.
you can, you're willing to do the work, give yourself a chance as opposed
Yeah.
to
Try.
thinking you can't before you ever get there.
Yeah. Limiting beliefs. Yeah. I agree.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining in. Reminder, Impact Driven Leader Summit, May 7th and 8th, Spokane, Washington, where if you're listening locally, great. Would love to have you there. If not, man, love for you to fly in. Beautiful time of year in the Pacific Northwest. You will have a worthwhile time. Again, go to idlsummit.com to learn more. Till next time, choose to lead with impact.